And you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High. For you will go on before the Lord to prepare a way for him and give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace.
Well, hey, Grace Chapel. So glad to be back with you again, especially on this second Sunday of Advent. Those of you who remember me know that I love this Christmassy time of year. So really grateful to have a chance to preach into this season. Karen and I have been on the road a lot this fall, seeing our kids, visiting some national parks, doing quite a bit of preaching and teaching and consulting. It's really been great to see what God's doing around New England and in other parts of the country. We've had a chance to visit and minister in a lot of great churches. But as I prepared for this message, thinking about all of you, I got really excited about preaching in my favorite church at my favorite time of year. So thanks to the team for inviting me. Thanks to all of you for showing up today and for your faithfulness to Grace Chapel at this really important time. Well, speaking of preparing to preach, as I prepared this message, I did something I never did in 40 years of preaching. I used artificial intelligence. Now, I don't know if I'm happy or sad to have gotten out of the game just as AI came onto the scene, but they say an old dog can learn new tricks. So I decided to give it a try. I asked, tell me about hope in pop culture. 3 words appeared right away. 3 words I had literally never seen or heard before. 3 words that don't even look like real words to me. Hopecore, hopepunk, and Grimdark. Now, in case you're as out of touch with pop culture as I am, I'll try to explain. I'll start with Grimdark because it sets up the other 2. Grimdark is a genre of fiction, usually science fiction or fantasy. It's characterized by bleak, dystopian, often violent themes. The characters are deeply flawed and hard to like. If you've ever watched a show or a movie and you're not sure who to root for, it's probably Grimdark. The storylines usually fall on a spectrum somewhere between pessimistic and nihilistic. So don't look for a happy ending. Think Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. As you can tell from those examples, it's become a popular genre in this 21st century. Hopepunk is a reaction to the Grimdark vibe. It describes literature and media that acknowledges the darkness and evil around us, but also introduces characters and movements that rise up to resist the darkness and the evil. Now, hopepunk still has a gritty, rebellious feel to it, but it includes acts of kindness and nobility and communal cooperation. Think Mad Max or The Handmaid's Tale. Now, just to be clear, I'm not recommending any of these for your next family movie night. If you're looking for something a little bit more family-friendly in the hopepunk category, you might think Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings, or even Harry Potter. So hopecore is a social media term that describes positive, uplifting online content. It's usually got inspirational images and narratives to it. It's meant to be a kind of antidote to the doom scrolling that leaves us feeling depressed and anxious. Think cat videos, engagement photos, cute kids, scenic views. If these particular images are making you feel a little happier right now, you get the idea. So all this to say that the teaching team has chosen a timely focus for this year's Advent series. The fact that these genres have become so popular in recent decades suggests that hope is becoming an endangered species in our modern world, a vanishing virtue. And we can understand why. The 21st century has brought us 9/11, extreme weather, weaponized politics, hate crimes, a global pandemic. Marriage, childbirth, religion are all on the decline in the Western world, not to mention wars and rumors of wars. If the four feelings of Advent are love, joy, hope, and peace, the one we're longing for most in 2025 may be hope. But what is hope exactly? Why is hope so important? And where can we find hope, especially in this grim, dark moment? Well, those are three questions we'd like to explore today as we turn to a story that doesn't fit any of the three categories we just mentioned, but a story that speaks powerfully to the hopes of every longing heart listening today. It's a story that's found in the first chapter of Luke's Gospel. And I'm going to suggest that we take it in 4 acts. I'll introduce each act by telling a portion of the story as it's found in Scripture. As we go, we'll gather some lessons and answer our questions, and hopefully we will leave this service feeling a little more hopeful than when we tuned in. So the story begins in Luke chapter 1, verses 5 through 10. Why don't you just listen for now, and you can go back later and take a closer look at the text. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. Once, when Zechariah's division was on duty and he was serving as a priest before God, he was chosen by lot to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. Now, if the characters in Grimdark and hopepunk literature are deeply flawed and hard to like, that is not the case with Zechariah and Elizabeth. They appear to be a wonderful couple who have faithfully served God and their community for many years. There's an ordinariness about them. They live in what would have been the suburbs of Jerusalem. Zechariah commutes into the city to fulfill his duties in the temple. And their lives aren't marked by any fame or notable achievements. But like most ordinary people, they had hopes for their family, for their career in the priesthood, for their nation, Israel. But as they entered their later years, most of those hopes had not materialized. They had no children, which was a source of heartache and shame in that culture. Zechariah, after a lifetime of service, had never been selected to enter the holy place and offer prayers. And their people, the nation of Israel, continued to flounder spiritually and politically. For centuries, they'd been living under one oppressive pagan regime after another: Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and now Rome. And after 400 years waiting for God's deliverance, there still had been no prophet and no sign of Messiah. Now, ironically, the name Zechariah means the Lord remembers. But after so many years of unfulfilled hopes, they most likely felt forgotten by God. Well, what are you hoping for these days? Let's start with Christmas. Maybe you're hoping for a certain present under the tree or a certain person around the tree. Are you hoping for a white Christmas or a warm Christmas? Maybe after a year of family conflict, you're hoping the holiday might bring you all together again. Or that after a year of hardship and disappointment, that Christmas might bring some joy to your soul. We've got our whole gang coming home for Christmas this year, which means there'll be 22 of us together for a week. Now, we're hoping that flights don't get canceled. We're hoping no one gets the stomach bug. We're hoping we still love each other at the end of all that togetherness. What are you hoping for beyond Christmas? What would you like to see happen in your life and the lives of those you love in the year to come? As I thought about that question, it occurred to me from my current stage of life that our hopes shift as we get older. In earlier seasons of life, our hopes tend to run along personal and pragmatic lines. We hope for jobs and homes and financial security. We hope our kids make the team. We hope they get into the right school. We hope they get off our cell phone plan. We hope for good weather on vacation. We hope our team wins the big game. We hope to find a senior pastor. As we get older, it seems to me that our hopes become more global, more profound, perhaps. Instead of just hoping that we make it, we hope the world makes it. Instead of hoping our kids will be okay, we hope the whole next generation will be okay. We hope our nation will survive this tumultuous season and find our way to better days. We hope the Church of Jesus Christ will continue to be relevant. We hope heaven is real and that we'll be ready for it. Hope, turns out, is a big deal. But what is hope anyway? That's our first question. The dictionary tells us that hope is a feeling of expectation and desire, wanting something to happen and thinking it could happen. That's not bad. Hope isn't just an idea, it's something we feel on a visceral level. But it's stronger than a wish, which feels kind of uncertain. Hope is an expectation that something we want really will come to pass. That's why hope is a perfect theme for Advent, because we know Christmas will come. We can count the days. It's not a wish, it's an expectation. So the dictionary gives us a good start. But what is hope from a biblical perspective? Well, as you can imagine, I have preached a lot of sermons on hope in 40 years of pastoring. So I rummaged through my files and found this definition that our team came up with some years ago. Biblical hope is the expectation that God will do something good. Biblical hope is the expectation that God will do something good. Now, we may not know exactly what that good thing will be or when it will happen or how it will happen, but we believe and expect that God will come through and do something good for us and for the world. So, with that in mind, now that we know what hope is, let's consider why hope is so important. So let's catch up with that likable couple whose hopes have not really materialized. We find the rest of their story in Luke chapter 1, 11 through 25. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and a delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God. And he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Zechariah asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I am an old man, and my wife is well along in years." The angel said to him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. Now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time." When his time of service was completed, Zechariah returned home. And after this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and for 5 months remained in seclusion. "The Lord has done this for me," she said. "In these days he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people." So finally, after a lifetime of service, Zechariah is selected by Lot to enter the holy place and offer incense and prayer on behalf of the people. But then, to his great surprise and terror, an angel appears in that holy place and tells him that his prayer has been answered. But which prayer? His personal prayer that he and his wife might have a child? Or his prayer for the nation, that God would come to their rescue and deliver them from their enemies? So we're going to find out. The angel was talking about both prayers. Now, what I find interesting about all of this is that Zechariah was still praying those prayers. Even though he and Elizabeth were well past their childbearing years. Even though it had been 400 years since a prophet had appeared in Israel. What was it that kept Zechariah praying those prayers after so many years and so many disappointments? It was hope. Hope that God might still come through. Now, it was a feeble hope on Zechariah's part. So feeble that he actually has a hard time believing it. He actually asks for a sign. I kind of imagine the angel saying, "Seriously, Zechariah? You're asking me for a sign with a real-life angel standing in front of you?" Still, old Zechariah had enough hope to keep on showing up, to keep on praying. And that little bit of hope kept him from becoming bitter or cynical or just giving up. And that's the first reason hope is so important. It sustains us. It keeps us going. Even when the future seems uncertain, even when the thing we're hoping for seems unlikely, hope is like oxygen for the soul. It keeps us alive. The poet Emily Dickinson famously described it this way: "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all." Hope is like a songbird, she says, chirping a happy tune even in a gloomy season, cheering the hearts of passers-by, prompting them to look up and imagine better, brighter days. So hope sustains us, even when it's feeble hope. And we all know what feeble hope feels like. Some of us have been hoping for something for a long time, hoping to meet someone special, hoping for a child or a grandchild, hoping for healing, hoping for a job, hoping for someone you love to come to faith, hoping for a broken relationship to be restored, or for a wayward child to come home. I got to thinking about a gloomy season in my life as a pastor and in our life together as a church. It was the season of COVID, when everything about church was hard. We had no idea how long it would go on, or if we would ever find our way back to normal. But it wasn't just COVID. Our relationships were strained by masks and politics and race. We had staff issues that we just couldn't seem to resolve. The elders and I were struggling with each other in a way we really hadn't struggled before. Some people left the church, some staff left. And at times I wondered if we would make it, if we would ever find our groove again. But hope sustained us. We hung in there with each other. We kept showing up, online and in person. We faced our issues. We prayed. We trusted that God could and would see us through, even when we had our doubts. Like a songbird in our souls, hope kept us looking up and looking ahead. And God did see us through to some really new and wonderful years that we enjoyed together. So whatever your heart may be longing for these days, listen for that song of hope, feeble as it might be right now, and let it remind you to look up and believe that God can and will do something good. So let's catch up with our story and see how this feeble hope played out for Zechariah and Elizabeth. The story is told in Luke 1, verses 57 through 66. When it was time for Elizabeth to have her baby, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown great mercy, and they shared her joy. On the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to name him after his father, Zechariah. But his mother spoke up and said, "No, he is to be called John." They said to her, "There's no one among your relatives who has that name." Then they made signs to his father to find out what he would like to name the child. He asked for a writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment, he wrote, "His name is John." And immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue was set free, and he began to speak, praising God. And everyone who heard about this wondered, asking, "What then is this child going to be? For the Lord's hand was with him." So, in due time, their feeble hopes were rewarded in a miraculous way. Their hope for a child and their hope that God would act on behalf of his people. But don't miss the fact that they didn't get exactly what they'd been hoping for. What they'd hoped for was to have a child when they were young, when other people their age were having children, when they had the energy for starting a family and building a home. Zechariah would have a lot of explaining to do on open house night at the kids' school. "No, I'm not the grandfather." Now, certainly Zechariah and Elizabeth were grateful for the gift of this child, but they would rather not have carried that heartache all those years. And it wasn't going to be easy raising a child in their old age, especially a child with an unusual calling and an ominous future. They were hoping for Zechariah Jr., who would follow in his father's footsteps. Instead, they got John the Baptizer, who would stir up all kinds of trouble. And they didn't get exactly what they were hoping for their nation either. The deliverance they were hoping for wouldn't come in the form of political freedom or a military victory. And the deliverer they are hoping for, the one their son would prepare the way for, that Messiah wouldn't look or act anything like the one they were expecting. No, they didn't get what they expected, but they got what they needed. The knowledge that God was still with them and for them and doing something good in their midst. And that's the second reason hope is so important. Hope rewards us, even when it's not what we expected. Remember, we define hope as the expectation that God will do something good. But we don't always know what that good thing will be, or when or how it will come to pass. We also know that we live in a fallen world where things don't always work the way they're supposed to work, the way we'd like them to work. The healing or the child or the job we were hoping for doesn't always come. But we can have confidence that God is working in and through everything that happens, even sad and bad things, to bring something good out of it. So I got thinking about this in terms of Grace Chapel's story. Things haven't gone as we expected this past year. We were hoping for a smooth and seamless transition from one senior pastor to the next. We thought we had it all figured out. We worked so hard at it. We sensed God's hand in it. But it didn't work out as we had hoped, for reasons we may never fully understand. And that's been hard for everyone. It's put a tremendous burden on the staff and the elders and all of you. But God has been working to bring good things out of it. The teaching team is doing a wonderful job. I know that because I tune in just about every week. And I've heard from many of you how much you appreciate their teaching. The elders have wisely and patiently taken time to listen, to survey the congregation and assess the needs and chart a way forward. I know some staff have left, and that's always hard. But it's not unusual in a time of transition like this. The staff that are here are doing great work. I've got to spend a little time with them, and I can tell you they are united and focused and looking to the future. A search committee is in place and has begun their work. God is preparing the hearts of this congregation and the heart of the next senior pastor. So we have reasons to be hopeful. That hope has been and will be rewarded, even if it's not exactly what we were all expecting, and even if it seems a long time in coming. And that leads us to our final movement in this story. As the proud and happy father, Zechariah, bursts into song. Listen to what he sings. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has come and redeemed his people. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. And you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High God, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of our sins, all because of the tender mercies of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the path of peace. So Zechariah's personal hope his hope for a child, was fulfilled that day. But his global hope for the nation, for the world, that was still off in the distance. The rescue his people were waiting for, the deliverer his son would prepare the way for, wouldn't show up for another 30 years. When Jesus of Nazareth burst onto the scene like a sunrise, overpowering the darkness and ushering in a new day. Now, old Zechariah knew he wouldn't live long enough to see that day, but the hope of that day was enough to make him sing for joy and serve without fear. And that's the third reason hope is so important. It inspires us, even when it's distant. Hope inspires us, even when it's distant. Biblical hope is the expectation that God will do something good, even when that something is a long way off. And that hope, that biblical hope, is as certain as the sunrise. It fills us with joy and anticipation and confidence. Earlier this fall, Karen and I were visiting some friends at a vacation house down south. Now, the house is situated on the bank of this mile-wide river flowing slowly through the low country of coastal North Carolina. And the bank of the river offers an expansive view of the eastern sky. And every morning, just before dawn, we would stand on that shoreline and watch for the sunrise. Now, we didn't wonder if it would come. We didn't wring our hands saying, gee, do you think the sun will rise today? I don't know, it rose yesterday. No, we knew the sun would rise. In fact, we were so certain it would rise that we got excited just thinking about it. Look, here it comes. Wake up, everybody, get out of bed. That's how biblical hope works. It's the expectation that God will do something good, even if it's in the distance. It's the knowledge that no matter how long or dark or lonely the night might be, the sun will rise. And that hope inspires us to get out of bed, to greet the day or the season with expectancy and confidence. And here's what's really cool about this prophecy. Zechariah isn't just looking 30-some years into the future to Jesus rising from the grave that first Easter morning. He's looking thousands of years into the future to a day that hasn't even come yet. A day when that same risen Jesus will come to us from heaven to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death and to guide our feet into the path of peace. Peace, that's shalom. That's wholeness and wellness and flourishing for the whole world. There's still a lot of darkness in our world. There's a lot of heartache in human experience. Our hopes are as personal and global as Zechariah's were. And the fulfillment of some of those hopes may still be a ways off in the distance. But biblical hope inspires us to look to the horizon with confidence, knowing that the sun will rise because the sun has risen, because God's Son has risen. I was praying for my grandchildren the other day, feeling kind of fearful of the world they're growing up in. They could live to see the dawn of the 22nd century. What will the world look like 75 years from now? Will America as we know it still exist? Will church as we know it still exist? Will the planet as we know it still exist? There's a lot to be afraid of, just as there was in Zechariah's day. Well, later that morning, Karen and I were talking about our daily Advent reading. It was about Jesus being the great I am, who was and is to come. the same yesterday, today, and forever. And out of the blue, Karen says, I'm feeling more hopeful these days. Now, without knowing anything about my fearful prayer that morning or even what I was going to be talking about in this sermon, just I'm feeling more hopeful these days. And why not? We're celebrating Advent. Christ has come. Christ will come again. Which means we can face the future with confidence, whatever it brings. And that leads us to our third question, which we really have already answered. So just to review, first question, what is hope? It's the expectation that God will do something good. Second question, why is hope so important? It sustains us, even when it's feeble. It rewards us, even when it's not what we expected. And it inspires us, even when it's distant. And the third question, where do we find hope? In the person of Jesus Christ, who was and is to come. Because you see, ultimately, hope isn't about what or when or how. Hope is about who. Hope is the expectation that someone will come along and do something to turn things around, to set things right. Without a who, hope is just wishful thinking, hoping things will get better by themselves. That doesn't usually happen. Someone has to show up. Patriot fans know all about this. It's been a gloomy stretch for the past few years. They haven't won a playoff game since 2019. Drake May shows up, and suddenly there's hope. Hope is a who. After a lifetime of waiting, Zechariah needed more than words and promises to believe that his hopes would be realized. He needed someone to show up. He needed to hold little John the Baptizer in his arms. Hope is a who. And interestingly, that's how it works in the hopepunk literature we talked about earlier. The evil is real in those books and movies. There are reasons to be afraid. But then someone shows up. Luke Skywalker, Katniss Everdeen, Frodo Baggins, Harry Potter. Someone rises up to confront the evil, to rally the people, to overcome the darkness. And we love those stories because they are echoes of a greater story, the greatest story the world has ever known. The story of God's Son, Jesus, coming to be with us in our darkness, to bear all the world's evil and suffering, to take it on himself, to take it down into the grave, and then rising like the sun to usher in a new day, a day of healing and forgiveness and restoration. A day that will come in all its fullness when he comes to us again from heaven to shine on those of us living in the land of darkness and to guide our feet into the path of peace. Hope isn't so much about what or when or how. Hope is about who. In the words of that familiar Christmas carol, the hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Whatever your heart is longing for these days, whether it's personal or global, bring it to Jesus. Invite him to do something good with it, even if it feels unlikely, even if that something is not what you expected, and even if it feels a long way off. Let's take a moment and just pray about that. Take a moment right now. Think of one or two things you're hoping for and ask God to do something good with them. Thank you, Lord, for coming into our world and for the promise that you will come again. Fill our hearts with hope, Lord. for our lives, for our church, for our world. Enable us to look to the future without fear and to wake up each day with a sense of expectancy, knowing you can and will do something good. In Jesus' name, amen.